Some say Disney will never do right by Star Wars, that the corporation's mismanagement has disgraced a once proud franchise in just 10 years. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy and former Disney CEO Bob Iger conspired to betray George Lucas. Then they ruined his sci-fi epic with a series of impulsive moves, like hiring arrogant, unqualified writers and directors, meddling in all phases of production, ignoring loyal fans, rushing releases, and refusing to acknowledge mistakes. Hard to argue against the preceding points. However, many forget Disney is capable of creating quality Star Wars films. I offer Rogue One as evidence. It contrasted sharply with the sequel trilogy that defined its era. The movie stayed true to Lucas's vision and added a grittier edge. I will compare Rogue One to the sequels for characters, plots, and subplots, and by so doing, reveal the not-so-secret elements for Star Wars success. Welcome to Galactic Initiative. I'm your host, Jeff. Thank you for watching. For part 1, I will limit my analysis to the 3 most important characters from each film in the interest of time. Rey, the sequel's main character, was almost flawless. She inexplicably grew to be virtuous and talented despite having no adult caregiver beyond age 5 and living in a dangerous backwater outpost on Jakku. No protection, companionship, education, or regular meals for her. These circumstances would typically yield a survivalist, quiet, distrustful, uncouth, but Rey was the exceptional exception, outgoing, loyal, gracious. Her scavenger skills proved far-fetched. She'd never boarded the Millennium Falcon, but flew and repaired it within minutes.
This hyperdrive blows are going to be pieces of us in 3 different systems. What'd you do?
I bypassed the compressor.
She'd never had compatriots, but readily and effortlessly established friendships. She'd never fought with a lightsaber, but defeated a trained opponent. She'd never been immersed in seawater, but swam competently. She'd never fired the Falcon's turret guns, but shot down scores of TIE fighters. The list goes on. Consider internal and external conflicts for a moment. Internally, she sought answers about her youth from parents who could never return, and she worried about controlling her burgeoning power through the Force. Externally, she faced the bad guys, Kylo Ren, Supreme Leader Snoke, and Sheev Palpatine. Long story short, on her journey, she rarely committed errors. In The Last Jedi, she wrongly believed Ben would abandon Kylo, interrupted an island party, deleted scene, and, this one is a reach, waited too long for Luke when she could have helped the Resistance. In The Rise of Skywalker, she incorrectly pinned BB-8 with a tree, destroyed a First Order shuttle with Force lightning, justified seconds later, and sequestered herself upon learning of her lineage. When she appeared to make a mistake, circumstances quickly absolved her. Imagine Rey as a self-reliant loner type who struggled to move past abandonment and trust issues while experiencing interstellar travel and being thrust into a war. A major improvement by simply following her backstory to The Force Awakens. Audiences could have empathized with her and cheered for her when she overcame her personal challenges and saved the galaxy. Sadly, as written, an unrealistic, unrelatable character. Jyn Erso, Rogue One's main character, had many flaws. She grew to be fierce, independent, and unscrupulous because she lost both parents, and her only adult caregiver beyond age 7 was Saw Gerrera. He trained her as an operative and plunged her into the rebellion against the Galactic Empire. She traveled to many star systems on rebel missions, which required fraud, infiltration, theft, and combat. She rationalized her violent conduct as justice for her mother's execution by the Empire, specifically Orson Krennic. Her father didn't return, and her efforts to locate him failed, so over time, she added his death to her grievances. But violence couldn't fill her emptiness, and emotional detachment became her coping mechanism. She resorted to crime based on her only skills once she split from Saw. 5 years later, the Empire captured her without knowing her true identity. Proven guilty, a harsh sentence followed: life at a labor camp.
You're currently calling yourself Liana Halleck. Is that correct? Possession of unsanctioned weapons, forgery of Imperial documents, aggravated assault, escape from custody, resisting arrest. Imagine if the Imperial authorities had found out who you really were, Jin Erso.
To open the film, Jin's behavior reflected her backstory: quiet, lonely, bitter. The plot took Jin on a roller coaster to self-actualization. Her internal conflicts. Originally, she grappled with regret, grief, trust, and self-control. After her father's sabotage plan recontextualized her past, she wrestled with his sacrifice and the massive responsibility that bore her nickname, Stardust. Her external conflicts. First, she faced incarceration. When the Rebel Alliance freed her, she endured a reunion with Saw, and by extension, the sins she tried to forget. Next, she dealt with Cassian and the rescue of her father. Finally, she confronted the Imperial forces on Scarif, including the man who wrecked her future.
Who are you?
You know who I am. I'm Jin Erso, daughter of Galen and Mira. You've lost.
Ultimately, she recognized the Death Star's wider implications and gave herself to prevent her family's catastrophe from being visited upon others. Jin's character shifted from unlikable to sympathetic to admired to mourned. A realistically tangled individual whose strifes, values, and perspectives changed with her participation in the film. Her accessibility and tragedy endeared her to viewers. Finn, a main or supporting character in the sequels, was inconsistent and underdeveloped. He seesawed between brave and frightened, resourceful and clueless, dedicated and uncertain. His experiences in the First Order became ridiculous plot conveniences. Janitor, infantryman, Starkiller Base, the Supremacy. He had intimate knowledge of every First Order command, yet the instruction and duties for him to acquire that knowledge weren't actionable. Unlike Rey's scavenging, his training and labor didn't impart proficiency or steadiness. Until, in his fight against Captain Phasma, his martial skills suddenly emerged, because they suited Rian Johnson. Recall Finn's defeat by a baton-wielding trooper in The Force Awakens. Less than a new canon week later, without additional tutelage or practice, days removed from a coma, he attacked Captain Phasma.
Let's go, Chrome Dome.
This discordant turn is but one example of the character's maddening inconsistency. Here's another. Finn explained the kidnapping and programming of innocent children to fill the First Order's ranks. But as soon as he defected, he killed stormtroopers without a care. After their confluence on Jakku, friendship and shared adventures seemed imminent for Finn and Rey. Each bore an awful, sheltered childhood and needed a comrade. Their initial escape from the First Order led to a bond further cemented by their flight from Kanji Club and the Guavian Death Gang. Rey begged Finn not to leave Takodana, and Finn misled the Resistance about Starkiller Base for an opportunity to rescue Rey. But 2 films later, their friendship hadn't grown. Finn suffered most from a lack of proximity to Rey. His subplot in The Last Jedi pulled him away from the unrealistic, unrelatable nucleus of the sequels. As a result, his character never advanced beyond The Force Awakens' final scene. People joke, correctly, if Finn was taken out of them, nothing in the last 2 films would change. Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams checked his development by resetting him at the beginning of those movies. They valued him only for his involvement with other characters and events, not as an individual with an arc of his own. He was relegated to sidekick status. Again, consider internal and external conflicts. Internally, Finn sought freedom from oppression and belonging. Externally, he faced the First Order for the benefit of his new friends, especially Rey. Unfortunately, thanks to simplistic, incongruous writing, his potential wasn't realized. Cassian Andor, a supporting character in Rogue One, was the counterpoint to Jin Erso. He became an agent at an early age, like Jin, but instead of extremism and crime, he chose the Rebel Alliance. In theory, he was an intelligence captain. In practice, he was a field operative required to do things that caused physical trauma and mental discord. During his introduction, he killed 2 stormtroopers and an informant to protect his identity, ceding morality for objectives. Though he was loyal to the Alliance, he trusted his instincts and background to guide him on missions. For example, his confidence in Jyn, which she subsequently earned as they battled through the streets of Jeddah City. Cassian disobeyed his orders to kill Jyn's father despite an argument over his turbidity. Their heated exchange after leaving Edu is one of my favorite Star Wars scenes. The sequel trilogy doesn't have a minute of its quality.
Suddenly the rebellion is real for you. Some of us live it. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. You're not the only one who lost everything. Some of us just decided to do something about it.
You can't talk your way around this.
I don't have to.
Once the Rebel Council refused to attack the Imperial Archives, Cassian and several of his brothers-in-arms volunteered to accompany Jyn for thievery on Scarif. It ended in death, a risk he accepted, but his team successfully stole the Death Star plans. Internally, he fought to reconcile his prior wrongs with a greater good, his actions with his orders, and his frustration with capricious leaders and the cause they represented. Externally, he faced Imperial forces and Jyn's obstinacy. Perhaps he tolerated his role to spare others or because he felt irredeemable or inasmuch as he hurt the Empire. His motivations were rooted in his unknown backstory. The Andor series, if it ever premieres, might uncover an intriguing history. His relationship with K2SO played for laughs. However, he was the straight man in the duo. I'm analyzing comedy, not sexual preference. The term describes a member of a comedy team who feeds lines to a partner who in turn replies with humorous quips. It accurately depicts him relative to K2. He occasionally chuckled or scoffed, but due to all he'd seen and done, his demeanor was serious. No intentional jokes. Few smiles. His one instance of lightheartedness concerned Jyn on the way to Scarif.
We're used to people sticking around when things go bad.
Welcome home.
The moment revealed a softer side buried under layers of difficult memories. And frankly, it encapsulated a character whose sensibilities evolved as much from an actor's performance as a writer's script or director's process. Diego Luna's portrayal helped audiences to know a haunted veteran, a man forged by clandestine violence, struggling to keep his humanity. Kylo Ren, the sequel's antagonist, was brooding and tormented, not menacing and diabolical. He didn't possess the gravitas of former franchise villains, such as Maul, Tarkin, and Vader. To be fair, when weighed and measured against Darth Vader, all villains will be found wanting. But the creators narrowed Kylo's prospects by giving away his internal conflict in the opening film.
I'm being torn apart. I want to be free of this pain. I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
Quite different from Vader, whose redemption was an unforeseen twist in the original trilogy. Plus, Kylo enjoyed a significantly larger part than all previous Star Wars villains. The petulant miscreant averaged 18 minutes of screen time per film, almost doubling the 10-minute total of Rogue One's antagonist, Orson Krennic. Familiarity breeds contempt? Since he wasn't entirely evil, that is, free from moral constraints, Kylo lacked a degree of self-determination. First, he murdered and manipulated on behalf of his master, Supreme Leader Snoke. Then, despite his kill-the-past rhetoric, he destroyed Snoke to assume the same title and perform the same function. Next, he tacitly agreed to serve Palpatine. Finally, Ben Solo returned to sacrifice himself for Rey because reasons. His goals were murky at best. Similar to Finn, Kylo was the victim of writers' contradictions from film to film. His backstory included his parents' split, expanding powers with the Force, temptations from Palpatine, and Luke's attempted execution, all culminating with a fall to the dark side. At this point, ask yourself one question. What did Kylo Ren desire? Please think about it. Greater power? Revenge against his father and uncle? His mother's love? The Resistance's end? The Republic's end? Rule over the galaxy? Darth Vader's authority? All of the above? None of the above? What pulled the guy out of bed every day? Years later, I don't have an answer. Childhood pain notwithstanding, his villainy for Snoke's approval and his unstable personality felt overly dramatic. Manifestations of a tortured soul, I guess. I also didn't understand the forgiveness he extended to himself through a vision of his father.
Man, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
If a novel or comic is necessary to clear up its confusion, how good was the trilogy? Kylo's internal conflicts. He sought ultimate power to justify his fall, but knew on some private level he belonged in the light. External conflicts. He searched for Luke before he searched for Exegol, before he searched for Rey. Did he mature? Did he confront his demons? Meh. The scripts needed an antagonist, so Kylo Ren was created in the image of Darth Vader, whether sensible or otherwise. Orson Krennic, Rogue One's antagonist, personified ambition at its evil limit. He lost sight of everything but the means to fulfill his power fantasies. An egomaniac who spared no concern for those used and discarded along his path, and who obeyed his superiors only for validation and promotion. To his credit, his confidence rejected inadequacy as a possibility, when humbler people would have admitted failure under the same conditions. In that sense, he was an eternal optimist, a fixed believer in his abilities to remove any obstacle. The Death Star was the pinnacle of his determination, yet he never attained his most coveted power, autonomy. For all his achievements and bluster, he was exposed as a puppet of those more intelligent, ruthless, and egocentric than him.
We stand here amidst my achievement, not yours!
I'm afraid the recent security breaches have laid bare your inadequacies as a military director.
The breaches have been filled. Jeddah has been silenced.
You think this pilot acted alone? He was dispatched from the installation on Edo, Galen Erso's facility.
His ambition eventually led to his reckoning in the style of Prometheus and Victor Frankenstein. Icarus also comes to mind. Out of hubris, unleashing a planet killer followed the theme. As Jeddah City turned to ash and rubble, Krennic, reflecting only on his accomplishment, oblivious to the genocide he committed, remarked,
Oh, it's beautiful.
His internal conflict was or is the duplicity of bureaucracies, where officials resent the hierarchy while simultaneously striving for recognition and advancement within it. His external conflicts changed as the film progressed. Complete the Death Star, prove its capability, then protect it from discovery. One of the fulfilling segments in Rogue One was Krennic's confrontation with Jyn at its climax. Ben Mendelsohn and Felicity Jones delivered a riveting scene.
My father's revenge. He built a flaw in the Death Star. He put a fuse in the middle of your machine, and I've just told the entire galaxy how to light it.
The shield is up. Your signal will never reach the rebel base. All your ships in here will be destroyed. I lose nothing but time. You, on the other hand, die with the rebellion.
The ghosts of Krennic's past materialized to punish him. His end was fitting, wounded, peering up at the Death Star, realizing his life's work would obliterate him. That look of incredulity. Magnificent. In conclusion, Rogue One proves Disney can create excellent Star Wars films. Its characters were complex and engaging. I only examined 3, Jyn, Cassian, and Krennic, but Saw, Bodhi, Galen, Chirrut, all outstanding. The sequel's characters were flat, simple, and directionless by comparison. Rey, Finn, and Kylo Ren had potential in the care of better writers. Unfortunately, their trilogy cast a shadow over Disney's first decade of Star Wars. What do Rogue One's characters suggest for Disney's future plans? Generally, characters need flaws to be relatable, development to be taken seriously, and defining moments to be great. Characters require challenges beyond controlling their powers and embodying their film's themes to be authentic. Internal conflicts should create depth and influence characters' methods for resolving external conflicts, which ought to change over the course of a narrative to maintain interest. Characters demand individual arcs sketched in advance to avoid inconsistencies. Specific to Star Wars, go easy with the Force. Star Wars isn't Marvel. It doesn't feature over-the-top faculties. Less is more with villains. Limit every antagonist to 15% of the total screen time. Keep George Lucas and Joseph Campbell in mind. Study their frameworks to preserve suspension of disbelief. Draw from mythology, religion, literature, warfare. Base characters in human history rather than arrogance to reinvent the wheel. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Part 2, Plots and Subplots, the sequels versus Rogue One, will premiere later this year.
Galactic Initiative is not authorized or endorsed by Lucasfilm Limited. The name Star Wars and all related materials are registered trademarks of Lucasfilm Limited, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, all rights reserved. Galactic Initiative is a registered trademark, and other product and company names are trademarks of their respective holders. Use does not imply affiliation or endorsement.